Good afternoon, ma'am. Good afternoon, classmates. This afternoon, I'm going to share with you about my report. The title of my report is Sound and Meaning. Sounds and Meanings. On this page, we will explore the relationship between spelling and sounds in English. Because this relationship varies a little from one English accent to another. We will use just one accent to avoid confusion. We will use the RP or the received pronunciation, the accent associated with most BBC news reader, as this accent is probably the most widely known in the UK. So this is the RP is the received words according to Daniel Jones. When we talk about sound patterns or patterns of alliteration, assonance and rhyme, we are talking about the patterns of distinctive speech sounds, the spelling sounds, or the phonemes. So phonemes in phonology and linguistics, it is a unit of sound that distinguishes one word from another in particular language, but people often confuse sound patterns with spelling patterns. The English writing system is based on the idea that a spelling letter represents a phoneme. So for example, the word bed has 3 letters in its written version and also 3 sounds in its spoken version. So the slash brackets indicate a phonemic transcription as opposed to a spelling which you put inverted commas in the standard way. But there are also plenty where things are nothing like so straightforward. There are lots of inconsistencies in how our spelling system represents phonemes. So the X in fox represents at the same time both the K and the S in the fox. But elsewhere, K can be represented in spelling terms as K as in keen or as C as in can. There are 26 letters rather, 21 consonants, 5 vowels in the English alphabet, but approximately 45 phonemes, 25 consonants, 3 approximants, 12 pure vowels, and 8 diphthongs in English. Exactly how many varies a little from one dialect to another. A reasonably exact relationship between spelling and phonemes exists for the many simple words in English. Example of these are mat, cap, lit, but there are also plenty where things are nothing like so straightforward. The word cap, lit, but the word back has 4 letters, for example, but only 3 phonemes. Back and scalpel has 7 letters, but only 5 phonemes. Scaff. Sometimes the numerical relationship fax has 3 letters but 4 phonemes. Now let's proceed to rhymes and irhymes. Rhymes, it is the property of sounds or what can you hear, and irhymes, it's property of letters, what you can see. So for example, in the word fine and word line are rhymes, they are rhymes, and also they are also have a irhymes. In the word scarf and tra, they are also rhyme but not an irhymes. In the word bo and calf are rhymes but do not they have an irhymes but they do not rhyme. Ka ba. So terms like half rhyme, partial rhyme, semi-rhyme, and para-rhyme, and these should prepare us for the idea that alliteration and assonance do not always have to be exact either. Half rhyme is also called a near rhyme or the slant rhyme or the oblique consonant sounds and no perceiving vowel or consonant sounds in common. So example of half rhyme is the bug and bun, the bug and bag. And to the canonical rhymes is always come at ends of lines of poetry, and patterns of these rhymes are usually called the rhyme schemes. Example of these are the couplet schemes, AE, BB, and many others or each. And the alternate line and rhyme schemes is the pattern is the AB, and so on or many others. So rhymes usually involve in the last syllable of the words which rhyme. So canonical rhyme is identified partly in terms of phonemic parallelism in the final syllable of the rhyming words and partly in the terms of possession in poetic line. An example would be mankind and behind and behind. In phonetic script from Pope, the rape of the lock, this name to the destruction of mankind, nourished two locks which graceful hung behind. From this and examples like it, we can see that in canonical rhymes, the syllable initial consonant, those in the syllable which come before the vowel, usually vary, but the vowel has to be repeated, and also any syllable final consonant, those which come after the vowel. But in other poems and songs, you can also have the rhymes between words which are not in line final position, but these are less common and usually known as by the marked term eternal rhyme, and rhymes where the lower or the final consonant cluster does not involve exact repetition, so-called half rhyme or the partial rhyme. Why? Because the spelling or the phoneme relation is an inexact one. In many languages, phoneticians have developed phonetic and phonemic alphabets to represent sounds accurately when they transcribe them. These alphabets use the symbols associated with the English spelling system, but with a consistent relationship between the transcription symbol and the sound it represents. So one thing to watch out for is the different tradition of phonetic and phonology use slightly different terminology and have a few transcription symbols which differ too. The set of character we adopt is the one used by Jameson in his introduction to the pronunciation of English, but you might find new difference between the set we use and what you might read elsewhere. So Alfred Charles Jameson, yeah, he was the one who introduced the he is known with his work in his introduction of the pronunciation of English. Then now the assonance and alliteration. Here we will look at patterns of sounds and the kinds of effect they can have in poem. First of all, though, we need to know what count as alliteration, assonance, and rhyme. Alliteration is usually described as the repetition of the same consonants, and for assonance it is the repetition of the same vowels. But some identical sound repetitions do not count as alliteration or assonance, and that sometimes repetition which are similar but not identical do count sometimes. Interestingly, students of poetry don't have much trouble in accepting that rhymes do not always have to be exact. But do all sound repetitions count alliteration or assonance? Below are the some lines from the famous poem by the c. 18 poet Alexander Pope. It is written in rhyming couplets, and he called it an heroic comical poem. Here piles of pins extend their shining rows, puffs, powders, patches, Bibles, the violet's docks. Now awful beauty puts on all its arms. The fear each moment rises in her charms. The satire is obvious enough in the third line of the quotation. In the praise, awful beauty, and the ludicrous implicit comparison between putting on makeup and preparing for battle, but we are going to concentrate on alliteration and the associated effects. So alliteration, assonance, and perception. It should be clear from the last exercise that alliteration is not a straightforward matter. Whether we perceive a pattern of consonants as being alliteration or not will depend upon a number of interrelated factors, and the same will be true of vowel patterns and assonance. Here are some obvious factors. The list is almost certainly not exhaustive, though Alliteration and assonance can sometimes involve similar sounds as well as the same sounds. Examples close together within the same line or a line or two will be felt more strongly than those further apart. There are few, if any, examples of alliterative connections is the 100 lines apart. Alliterative and assonantal patterns are felt more strongly if they involve lexical words and less if they involve grammatical words because it is easier to perceive semantic connections between lexical words. They are most perceptible if they occur at the beginning of words. The ends of words are next most perceptible and the middle of words at least. They are more perceptible if they occur in a stressed syllable than unstressed syllables. They are more likely to be noticed if they help make an interpretative connection and less likely if they do not help to promote such connection. This is where the parallelism rule comes in. Sound symbolism. Example of this is onomatopoeia. So, sound symbolism, that this is the words that sound what they mean. We'll look at sound symbolism of words that sound like what they mean. The most obvious examples of this are the onomatopoeic words like buzz or hum, where the second structure of the nouns mimic the sound they represent in the world outside language. But as we shall soon see, words can sound appropriate not just in relation to the sense of hearing, but also in the relation to the other senses. For example, some sounds can symbolize size, length, and so on. Onomatopoeia is one kind of sound symbolism. This is why we use the general term sound symbolism rather than onomatopoeia. Are all sounds symbolic? So here's a question. The short answer to this question is no or no. In fact, most words in language, including English, are not sound symbolic. The phonemic composition of vast majority of words is arbitrary. There is something particularly dog-like or cat-like about the phonemic composition of words like dog or cat. One easy way of grasping this is by noting how the phonemic makeup of these words differs when we provide English synonyms for the same concepts. Example given is the hound and moggy. Indeed, words from the language, if the words of languages had to be sound symbolic, you would expect the phonemic compositions of words in different languages referring to the same thing to have lots of phonetic similarities. So, the phonetic, it is the study of sounds. The phonetic similarity, these are the segments of two or more sounds which are or share phonetic features and are frequently found as variants of single phonological units in a language. So, sound symbolism. Sound symbolism below, we provide a version of a poem with some stretches highlighted. These are the parts we think contain sound symbolism within them. So here is the example: the gray sea and the long black land and the yellow half moon large and low and the startled little waves that leap in fiery ringlets from their sleep as I gain the cub and pushing pro and quench its speed I the slushy sand. Then a mile of warm sea-scented beaches, 3 fields to cross till a farm appears, a tap at the pane, the quick sharp scratch and blue spurt of a lighted match, and a voice less loud through its joys and fears than the two hearts beating each to each. So other symbolic in the poem. The grammar and punctuation in the poem seem also to have structured symbolic effects. The first stanza consists of one sentence, of which the first four lines appear to be the unusual equivalent of main clause in overall structured terms. The last two lines are two subordinate clauses signaled by the subordinate conjunctions, as in line 5, which are conjoined by the word and, but the first four lines do not have a main verb at all. They consist of four coordinated conjunctions. Two in the first line are the head words sea and land, the second line head word or the half moon, and the third and fourth lines together the head word waves. The only verb in the first four lines is leap in line 3, which is part of the relative clause post modifying waves. This list of noun phrases with no main verb helps to enact the impression of the viewer, the male lover whose viewpoint we share, noticing, contemplating first one thing and the another in what, because of the lack of verbs, is a static environment. Then another in what, because of the lack of verbs, a static environment. The semicolons and the ends of lines 1 and 2 reinforce this effect and push up to connect the first two noun phrases intimately together. Next, line K. Hence, first of all, we see in the same perceptual moment the more distant seascape and the land beyond it. Then our attention moves upward to see the moon hanging above the land. These two views are both static. Finally, we see the sea immediately around the boat, which is much more active because of the verb leap in the relative clause post-modifying waves and the two dynamic pre-modifiers startled and fiery. Overall, we thus feel that we observing sequentially as the lover notices them a number of different aspects of the same overall scene. In the second stanza, which is also one sentence, the whole sentence is dominated by a series of noun phrases. However, this time we get much more of a sense of movement. This is explained by three interconnected facts. First is the noun phrases in the first three lines are not coordinated by and as before, suggesting faster chains. The head words of three of the phrases are noun derived from verbs tap, scratch, and spurt, suggesting more dynamism, and the topic shifts from one noun phrase to another are wider than before, so that it's not possible for our mind's eye to join together into an overall scene what is being referred to. This in turn prompts the idea of change. In the last line of the poem, the mirror image grammatical structure of each matches the mirror image word repetition already referred to, which symbolically represents the oneness of the two lovers. Overall, then, the grammar of the poem, aided by the lineation and the punctuation, is more symbolic, helping us to feel the perception, experience, and feelings of the lovers through a series of perceived parallels between the experience of reading and the lines and the experience of the lovers into the world of the poem. That would be all.